right, and here they come. Hello,
Trying
everybody.
to put myself in a better light. Oh no, maybe I better not do that.
Hello, everyone coming in. This is our virtual garden walk. We'll give a few minutes for everyone to get settled in. If you're watching the recording, you might want to skip ahead to about 4 minutes. That's usually when I start getting antsy and want to get started. I expect a full house tonight. This was a popular subject. If you hear of someone that isn't able to make it in, they'll be able to watch the recording using the same thing. The same key that you use to come in, you can use for the recording as well afterwards. We have 4 master gardeners here tonight, so that's kind of special, all in the same room. I don't think Jules is going to want me to see her. There. Oh, there we are. We're at 100, 101. It let extra.
Wow.
Wow. 102. Oh, maybe they're just saying.
Or is the limit 100 or did you up that?
Yeah, we're supposed to be limited to 100, but we're at 103 now, so maybe. Unless my boss changed something today.
Well, that'd be nice.
So welcome everyone that's coming in. If you're not familiar with Zoom, you're not going to be able to see yourself. You should be able to see whoever's talking, which that's me right now, and you will see the presentation when we come up with that. We're going to have a full house tonight. We have 4 master gardeners here. We have Tom, who does the Master Gardener Presents program and comes up with these great subjects every single month. And we have Dee and we have Jackie, who are going to be presenting their gardens. We'll be getting started in a couple of minutes. I just want to give everybody a chance to come in. The numbers are still going up, so let people get a chance to log in if they can. So on the bottom of your screen, you'll have a Q&A, and there should be a chat function down there. If you're having some technical problems, you can put it in that chat, and I can try to help you with your problem. If you come up with questions during the program, you can put them in the Q&A. We're going to stop for questions and answers after each garden this month. Okay, so I don't see our numbers going up anymore, so I think we'll get started. My name is Jill Vandening. I work at the Kimberly Little Chute Library, and this is Master Gardener Presents. This month we're doing a virtual garden walk because our garden walk was canceled this year. So I thought it would be fun to take a look at some gardens and take a tour and talk to gardeners. Tonight we have Tom Wenzel, he is not going to be presenting a garden. He is here to help answer questions and things. He is the brainchild behind Master Gardeners Presents, which we've been bringing you every single month. We have Dee Dallum, who has been doing the garden walk for the last 6 years, and she will be presenting her garden as well as another Master Gardener's garden who wasn't able to be here tonight, but she knows a lot about it because she knows a lot about gardens. And we have Jackie Mickey, who has also been on the garden walk before and has an awesome garden. So I think we're ready to get started. Dee, you'll have to share your screen to get
maybe this one.
And if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A box down below, and we're going to take questions after every single garden. Okay. Normally we only do one at the end, but this time we're going to do something a little different because you might have garden specific questions.
There we go.
There we go.
You want me to start?
Yeah, I'll leave it to you, Dee.
Okay. Mine is the first garden. Mine is the first garden. I've been at this house for 30 years. My house is white and I have a lot of shade garden beds. So when I look for things to put in my garden, I'm looking for a lot of color and texture to make it show up. So those are the things that I'm going to concentrate on showing you tonight in my garden. When I go shopping, I look for things with color, and a lot of times I look for things with a kind of a chartreusey green or a variegated leaf because that's going to show up in my garden. And this is one of my shopping trips of many that year. This is the one of the in my front border right by the front walk this year. I used kind of pink as my theme this year. Two of the places that I really like to go shopping, and we have many, many places in this area. We are so lucky, but Honeymoon Acres and Green Handle Nursery out on N in, I think, Little Chute. So that's where a lot of my perennials or annuals come from. In my garden, when I started putting this presentation together, I started looking around and noticed that I have a lot of focal points in my garden. In some gardens, everything leads to one sort of focal point, but in my garden, I have focal points pretty much everywhere. So that's part of the way that I set up my gardens. And I just learned this term not too long ago, stop the eye. And in my beds, because I have a lot of shade, it's a lot of green. And so to stop the eye, it's like putting something of color in there, or like maybe a statue or a piece of art, something to stop your eye from just kind of whizzing down the border of all that green. And so I kind of thought stop the eye was kind of a neat term, and I hadn't heard it before. So in my garden, I've put in color and texture and things like that to kind of make you stop and look a little bit and not just breeze by all the green. When I look for things to plant, I look for things for all 4 seasons. Because I have a white house, I chose a mauve colored crabapple. I have in my back circle a red bud, which gives me some color early on in the season. In the summer, I have a red maple out in my front lawn. Gives some color in the summer. In the fall, I look for things like burning bush. This happens to be a serviceberry leaf. And I look for things in the fall that are going to give me color too, like the crab apples on the crabapple tree. This is a viburnum berries. They self-seed like crazy. The birds don't seem to like them, but they self-seed like crazy, but they give some color in my back corner. This is an autumn purple ash. It's kind of a high maintenance tree, but it's beautiful. And you can see I have my 2 social distancing benches out under this tree. It's a wonderful shady place this time of year for neighbors to stop by and have a chat outdoors at a safe distance. And when the sun shines on this tree, it almost like glows. I think of my garden in winter too, not just the seasons that we actually have flowers, but I think planning for winter too is something to think about. So that's this one. One of the first things we put in when we built our house were these 2 squares. Most people would put probably vegetables in there. I don't. One of the things that I want to point out on this is the bed is a little bit raised, and then there's a flat board that runs along the edge, the outside edge. And the reason for this is that you can run the lawnmower wheel right along that flat piece of board, and you never have to do trimming. You can also see I have rocks along the edge there, and that's because little kids and sometimes adults too like to throw rocks in the creek, which is right next to this bed. This is what the beds look like in summer. They've kind of become English gardens in that they've kind of grown together because I hate to split things up. You can also see in the background, I don't have a fence, but I have kind of a green fence between the bushes and the trees that are along the side of my yard and the back of my yard. It's like a green screen, and you can't really see from my house to the next house, and I like that a lot better than having a fence, which kind of shuts people out, I think. One of the things that we did when we laid out the beds is we made curves in the beds instead of straight shots from one end to the other. And this, I think this makes my lawn or yard look a lot bigger than it actually is. It's kind of a regular suburban lot, but if you stand, and I'm not even standing at the back edge of my garden from here, I think the curvy edges make it seem bigger than it actually is. On the left side here, I have a chartreuse colored smoke bush, and which is a little bit unusual. And on the right, there's a con-color fir, and it looks like a evergreen tree, but if you touch it, the needles on the tree are like rubber. It's very soft. So that's something a little bit different. I think you can use curvy lines or uneven lines in hardscaping too, and we've done that with the patio stones here. And with the retaining wall, it doesn't look like it here, but the retaining wall actually is circular in shape. The tree that's over on the left here is a DeGroote spire. I think it's in the arborvitae family. And there's a on the right here, there's a, that's where the red bud is. And now, this is when it was first planted. It's much, much bigger than that. Now it shades the whole circle. I also look for things to add texture by the plants that I put in. For example, here and here. This is a fringe tree, and it's planted pretty close to my house, and it's kind of a mid-sized tree. So it's at this point, it's grown about as tall as it will, but in June, it gets these wonderful tassely, fringy, fragrant flowers on. And I think it just adds some interest to the front of the house. I also look for things that aren't exactly flowers, but these are, this is a spikenard plant, and I cut it back to the ground in the fall, and in the spring it comes back up, and mine is, it's huge this year. It's been in a couple years, but it gets these wonderful berries or pods on in the fall. And I think that adds, and this particular bed is quite shady, so it adds a little bit more interest, I think, in that dark space. You can see the spikenard here up in the chartreuse color, and I especially chose it for the color because, again, this spot is under a crabapple tree and it's quite shady, and so the chartreuse color adds some interest during the summer. And these are globe flowers. Again, it's when they're in bloom, it's one of those stop the eye accents. And I add a little color with some of the birdhouses and things back here. Also, interesting pots, I think, can add texture and interest to a garden as well. I'm not an artist, but I like art, so I collect it. And I've run out of space for things in the house, so I collect things for my garden. This is one of the pieces, and as you can see, the circular or curvy shape is something I think I'm particularly attracted to. This is another one. I think you could probably use this to train something up on too, but I don't do that. Another one. Birds like to sit on this. Another one. This bench has been out in my garden since I think 1905. It was in its original place. It's been replaced, but it wasn't falling apart. And so I couldn't throw it out. I wouldn't sit on it because I think the only thing that's holding it together is the lichens that are growing on it now. So I moved it to another spot and hope my husband wouldn't notice because he would probably throw it out. And I tried to put together things that kind of have light colors, but maybe different textures, like the wood with the metal. I wish I could paint like the birdhouse on the left, but I can't, so I do straight lines with tape and paint. And so in fact, I don't let the fact that I can't paint stop me from doing things. I just do simpler shapes. This chair was built by my grandfather years and years and years ago, and it sat on their front porch forever. Then the chairs came to Wisconsin, and my parents had them for years and years. And then they came to sit in my garden for a number of years. And finally, they were so decrepit, they were falling apart. And so I propped it up with sticks and used it as a trellis. But I like the fact that the texture here, I think, adds some interest and is a contrast in color to the clematis that's growing on it. My back circle, when it's fully in, is a lot of green. And so I look for things to add some color to the patio circle. And so I planted the pink rose bush here. And I generally put pots out on the patio with colorful peonies or clematis or maybe purple fountain grass this year. And I have some other pots. There's some color that comes with the coneflowers and the daylilies that are blooming now, but a lot of the year it's just green. So I use the colorful pots to kind of stop the eye and add some color to the back patio. This is a garden cart I inherited from my folks, and then they used it forever, and then I used it forever, and the bottom rusted out, so voila, it became a planter because it had drainage. And the good thing was that I could move it from place to place when it came time to cut the grass. So there's that. And it adds color to the front of the house too. I'm into pigs and fish. And so again, this is a kind of a corner in the back side of the house. And the pig and the clematis kind of add a stop the eye focal point in this back corner. Friends were moving and they said, oh, we have this flamingo, would you like it? Of course I would. So that's in the back by the patio in the back side of my house. Another way to add color to gardens is to put up things like maybe colorful wind chimes. This happens to be kind of a wind chime we made in a Master Gardener class made out of, what are those? They're metal discs, just hardware and beads and fish line. And it can add a touch of color in a shady spot. These are tree charms, and they're made of beads and mirrors. And again, I have them in that back border where it's fairly shady, but it catches enough sun to add a bit of sparkle to this area. I've seen some people who have back fences who will hang framed mirrors, again in a shady spot, to bring in some touch of light to a kind of a more shady spot. This is the new bench. As you can see, I did a simple paint job on it, but it's bright colors. I can see this is in the back corner of my lot, and I can see it from the family room all the way across the yard into this back corner. Originally, there was a magnolia tree here, and it got scale a couple of years ago, and so it had to go. And I didn't feel like having the stump dug out, because that's expensive. So I put in this trellis, which was actually made by Jackie's dad. And again, I kind of put in various types of hostas and heucheras, coral bells, to add some color to this area. And even though if you can't paint fancy designs, you can get a lot of color by just doing straight shapes and adding color like that. And it adds a bit of height to the back corner here. One of my favorite places to shop when they're open is Hidden Hollow Art. And that's where the little tree shape came here. And again, it's bright fire engine red, really. And again, it just, I can see it from the house out in the back garden. Just adds a pop of color. I like Adirondack chairs. And I bought these unfinished from like a Home Depot or something like that. And I said, this is the color I want to paint it. And the lady said, I think you have to paint Adirondack chairs white. And I said, no, I'm painting mine purple. Just again, to add some color to this corner. Somebody was getting rid of their fence. So I took a piece of that and painted it red and added it to this corner. This is something fishy going on here. Again, another focal point in this part of the garden. Totems have become very popular in gardens, and people were making them out of teapots and all kinds of things stacked up. Somebody had given me some of their old fence boards, so I got a friend to make the shapes for me and painted it up because I like bright colors. And so these are my version of garden totems. My back porch is a little dark, so I added some flowers here and the bright colored chairs to brighten up my back porch. My front porch is a little bit recessed too, so I tried to put things out there that will add some color to the dark spot there. We are the last house before a creek, and so we have ditches where we live, and the ditches, because we're the last house before the creek, our ditches are fairly steep. And when I could still mow the lawn, the angle from the bottom of the ditch up to the top along the driveway was exceedingly steep and hard to do. So we put in this bed to make it a little bit easier for me to mow. The angle is a little bit easier. We also put in a cement trench at the bottom of the ditch to move the water along because we were always having wet ditches. This is my water feature. Sometimes Mother Nature takes over and it gets a little wild. Normally, the ditch, if I were agile enough, I could almost jump over the ditch most times, and it's at the very, very deepest, knee deep. But sometimes, and we've had a number of these rains, especially recently, that have been 100-year rains, but they seem to be coming a lot more frequently. And sometimes they take big bites out of the lawn. And so we had the creek lined with these big rocks to prevent this from happening again. And so this is what it looks like when the creek is finished. We've put in orange ditch lilies along to help hold the soil. Mother Nature has also added dame's rocket, goldenrod, jewel plant, and a bunch of other things that I don't even know what they are, but it pretty much has color throughout the year as well. So that's my garden. That's the end.
Okay, I'm going to unmute us all. There's Jackie's. Okay, so
Move on.
I'm going to, is this the end?
Yep, this is the end.
Okay, I'm going to go to the questions then. Okay, somebody wants to know how big your yard is.
I don't think it's as big as a 1/4 acre. And it's kind of pie shaped, so it's narrower at the street and a little bit wider because we're on a circle. It's kind of, there are no two sides that are the same. So it kind of stretches out to one back corner, but I don't think it's as big as a 1/4 acre.
Okay, and I think this is referring to the garden you had with the low thing with the lawnmower. Somebody asked if the bunnies get in there.
Oh, in the squares?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, yes, there's bunnies everywhere. But what I do is they mostly like my Asiatic lilies. And so all of my Asiatic lilies have a little fence around them.
Okay. And then we have, where did you purchase your large patio stones?
The landscaper put them in. I would tell you it was Jerry Oberstadt, but I'm not sure that he's in business anymore, but landscapers can do that.
Okay, what is the name of the tree that gets the white fringe in the spring?
That's exactly what it is. It's a fringe tree.
Fringe.
And usually about middle of June is the peak season for that.
Okay, and we
I would like to comment on that. I was at Dee's Garden this spring and fell in love with the tree, so I was going to get one. And I went through all of the nurseries in the area and nobody carries them. Turns out that it is on the invasive species watch list for Wisconsin. And so none of the nurseries are going to carry it. You know, and I went all over the place looking for it. It's a native of the Carolinas. So I'm not sure why it's on the watch list, but you're going to have difficulty. You might be able to order it online, but you would not be able to find it at a local nursery.
I did not know that.
well, somebody wants to know, somebody's a rebel. They're like, they said, how big does the
And I
fringe,
wanted to know.
How big is what?
how big does a fringe tree get?
I would say it's about 15 feet tall. And I think that's about as tall as it's going to get. And it's maybe about as big around as a small bedroom.
Okay. And who are the artists of your wonderful metal sculptures?
Most of the pieces that I have come from 2 women. And one calls herself Demetra, and I think she's from around Stoughton. I see her at various, when we have them, art art shows like Art in the Park in Appleton and the Green Bay Botanical Gardens when they have their spring garden fair. She's been at both of those.
Okay, and it looks like we're out of questions, so we can move on to the next garden, Jackie Mickey's garden.
Hi. Well, unlike me, when I find plants at nurseries that I like, I just purchase them and I come home and try to find a spot. So there is really no rhyme or reason to my garden. We had acquired this pump a couple years ago from somebody who was throwing it out. So I thought, well, hey, I could make something with that. So I like to repurpose a lot of things. So you'll see several things repurposed in my garden. So this is, as you come up to my house, it's sitting on the right-hand side to the walkway to the backyard. And that is a Rex begonia in that blue pot, which gets a really beautiful silvery pink color to it. And this is all shade right here. Next. This is a front garden bed that sits kind of in front of my house. When I moved in here 15 years ago, that was all mulch. And as you can see, we have a lot of trees. So we replaced the mulch there with the stone because it would, when we try to leaf blow whatnot, all the mulch ended up in the grass anyway. Again, we have a pump right there, and there's a wagon my father made for me. He's always looking for projects. So my mom's always telling me, your father needs something to do. So I try to find things and give him something to do. So he built this, and we put kind of a false bottom in it. And I think I have 16 flower pots in the wagon that I just planted a lot of annuals in. And they do quite well, actually. And I do have quite a few hostas placed around the yard because we do have a lot of shade. This particular hosta is a Sum and Substance, and it gets quite large, and it stays that real bright, vibrant green. Okay, next. Here's the front of the house. There is no shade here, so it gets quite hot. So there's not a lot I can do with it. I've had a lot of trial and error and a lot of failed plants because it gets so hot. But so far my lilies are doing great. The red chair, every year it's something different planted in there. To the right back here, there's a yellow obelisk that my father built, another project. The fence we have out there just for a little area for our dogs to go at night. I am in the country. We have 3 acres and there's an 80-acre field behind us. So we have a lot of coyotes and we have little dogs. So when they go out at night, I like to keep them in a little penned-in area. Next. This is the other side of my house in the front as well. Here's another, this bench here was an old garden bench with the metal back. I took the back out and the wood was completely rotted. So again, my dad rebuilt the bench for me. It's a nice sitting area. The flowers around it, there's unfortunately not a lot in bloom at the present moment. So there is a lot of green here. You can see on the yellow obelisk, I have a purple clematis growing up there. And to the left of it, there is a giant hibiscus, and those aren't even in blooming yet for me. Next. I had recently taken a class at Fox Valley Tech called metal sculptures, and I made these flowers. Somebody once asked me if I sold them, and I said I can't. It literally took me 4 full Saturdays to make those things. It was a lot of fun. They're actually about 5 feet tall. I drew the pattern, cut them, welded them. Not a good welder, but I am a good grinder. And on the right, my topsy pots. What we did there was just put a 4-foot rebar in the ground, and the pots, of course, have a hole in it. So I just put the pot down the hole, and then kind of just tilted it, filled it with dirt, and then, you know, just kind of went back and forth with each one. They're very easy to make. I was just gonna say, if you use the terracotta pots, they dry out very fast. So you really, really have to watch the water. Okay, next. So there's the pump with the whiskey barrel again. Obviously it wasn't running that day, but here's the walkway that goes alongside the garage that goes to the backyard where my garden actually is. And of course, you always have to take time to smell the flowers. And this geranium was just the most beautiful red flower. It was just stunning. That was last summer. Okay. Okay, here's the walkway alongside the garage. Again, it's pretty shaded right there. I have a large maple tree to the right. So my hostas are doing quite well. Right by that black leaf leaning against the garage, I've got a pulmonaria plant, which is also known as lungwort. It gets really pretty purple and pink flowers early spring, and the leaves, it's kind of hard to tell, but they kind of are a little hairy and they have polka dots on them. So it's, once the flowers are spent, the leaves actually are very interesting. Next. So this is at the, behind the garage, just at the end of that walkway. There is some daisies and black-eyed Susans. That little trellis to the left, kind of to the screen, there is a little climbing rose plant on there that was my great-grandmother's. So my mom figures that's about 100 years old and it's going strong. We brought back the wrought iron railing from my grandparents' house when they tore out their porch system, and I have some big cement steps going down a hill there. So of course I had to have the railing, and we drug it back from Minnesota, and now it's in my yard. Next. Here's a pergola we built about 10 years ago. It's directly behind the garage. The chairs are built by my father, and it's just with the light bulb lights hanging. They don't twinkle, but they're like fairy lights inside. So it's got a really nice soft lighting at night, but it's just real peaceful to sit back there because I am on a busy road. So the front of the house can be kind of loud, but coming to the back, it's just really, really nice place to sit. The white flower in the background there are actually yuccas that are in full bloom, and I believe there will be a picture of them, a better picture coming up. Next. Like Dee said, she likes pigs and fish. Well, I like frogs. So I had acquired a couple of these big frog, porcelain, ceramic frogs. So I adorned the pergola with them to give a splash of color. Next. When we moved here 15 years ago, there was nothing in the backyard. It was just grass, absolutely nothing. So again, with all the trees, we decided we'd put rock down. It was a little bit easier to maintain and blow the leaves out. And there's a little path going across to make it easier to walk through. Next. There's the yucca I spoke about. That is a Weigela in front of it. Unfortunately, it looks like it's at the tail end of blooming. To the left is a pond we put in. It is approximately 10 feet across, and it's just about 4 feet deep. So we do have koi in there, and we do leave them in for the winter. The little garden shed in the back, my husband and I built. It started with the door that you see in the front, came off of an old farmhouse some friends of ours asked me if I wanted the door, and we had to build a shed to put it on. Next. Here's another structure my father built for me. Honestly, I think I've seen it on Pinterest, and I have some solar lanterns hanging on it, but I am going to change them out periodically. I've got some bird cages that you can see to the left hanging, and I thought maybe in the fall I would hang like plastic pumpkins or something. There is a corn crib in the back that took me about 6 years to acquire because I could never find one, and anybody who had one, they were never willing to sell it to me. So, but I finally got one last summer, and it's incorporated with my chickens. So here's the pond. My husband and son dug the hole, moved the rock. We got all the big flat rock from the quarry in New London. So each one was handpicked. The lilies take over the pond, so we do have to trim them out, but they're gorgeous. And we've had the lily in that water for approximately 8 years maybe. And fortunately, we have not had any leaks yet, knock on wood. Next. And there's my resident frog. So, and it's fun to listen to them at night croaking. Yep, yeah, he's fun. Here's the cornflowers that border the one side of the pond. I just was taking pictures one day and I thought, well, that's just a really, really pretty picture. So with the sunlight coming in on the left, and that's a Weigela over there as well. Next. I have milkweed and swamp milkweed. This is swamp milkweed growing in my yard, and I do search out caterpillars and eggs and bring them in my home and hatch them out and release the butterflies. And I just released this one about a week and a half ago. Next. There again, the structure to the left of the screen is that another project my father built for me, and I have morning glory growing on that. This was last year. Morning glory kind of can get away from you, and the big plant to the left of that, oh, my mind just went blank. Castor bean. It's a beautiful plant, but you have to be careful because the beans are poisonous. There's the giant hibiscus dead center, the red one in full bloom, and balloon flowers are the purple ones kind of over to the left of the red flowers. And we have an 80-acre cornfield behind us, so I get a natural green fence in the midsummer as well. And there's a little bit close-up shot of the cornfield with the sun coming up and the yucca plant and black-eyed Susans. Next. This is a honeysuckle vine that grew up to kind of turn itself into a tree. It is a hummingbird magnet. I mean, you can just hear those little guys zip around there all day long. The red thing down on the bottom was some crazy thing that I had found at Goodwill. It actually is a candle holder. I spray painted it red and figured, well, there again, the repurpose into a plant holder or a pot holder. Next. This Weigela got completely out of control. It is really 6 feet tall, and I'm in the middle of trying to make it into a tree because the bush just was like ridiculous. So it's kind of a work in progress, and I figure, well, it was so out of control. If I do some more damage to it, I guess I'll just replace it with something different. Next. And again, just pops of color with pots placed, throughout your garden, putting in some annuals to get different colors. The annuals, they bloom all summer long, where the peonies in the background to the left of the orange bird bath, they're a beautiful spring bloom. They unfortunately don't last long, so I bring in color with bits of artwork and annual plants. Next. Here is some sphere thing that I had found at I was at auction, I believe. The telephone pole in the background is actually one of my clothesline poles. We just replaced them this year because the poles were rotting. So I haven't got my lines up there yet. We're still letting it settle. But that's kind of a unique clothesline pole, is having like the old telephone things along the railroad tracks. Next. Here's my chickens. They live in my backyard, but they do need to be fenced in because they get into the gardens and wreak havoc. They just dig everything up looking for bugs. So they do have quite a large area to run around in there, and I do believe they are quite happy. Next. On my patio, I like to have color out there. If we're not using it, we might as well put some plants on there. I actually got the bowls and the plates from the Dollar Tree. My husband drilled holes through them for drainage, and I glued them together so they won't fall apart, and they're easy to move when I actually need to use my table. And the door in the background, the white door, we found that and made a little patio bench out of it. Next. Here's behind the pond and whatnot, we have our backyard is raised, and then it has a little bit of a hill, as you can kind of maybe tell behind the row of peonies. We did build a little greenhouse that's in the background. I think there's another picture of it later on, just to get my plants started in the spring. Next. Here's my big toad family. It was given to me by a friend who was moving, and she just couldn't take them with. So they now live in my backyard. Here's just another shot of like kind of on the other side of the pond looking over to the patio. Next. An old headboard my neighbor was getting rid of, and I thought, well, I can find use for that. The colorful towers, I guess, I actually found them at Goodwill. They're just brown resin molded plastic, and that was my winter project. I painted them to get that bright pop of color, because this is a shade area, as you can't really tell too much, but it's just got a lot of greens in that garden. Next. Another angle, part of an old ladder there. Big green ball that's actually an old hanging lamp upside down. Next. So now this is at the bottom of the hill. Looking up, you can kind of see the pergola to the left and the shed to the right. We had to put rock and plants there because it's steeper than it looks, and it was really hard to mow. So this is what started the whole garden, is just putting things there so we wouldn't have to mow that spot.
Tell them why else you put this garden in.
What's that?
Tell them why else you put this garden in. Because of your sons.
I forgot. What you had said something. What? Yeah. What was it? I forgot what the boys.
They used to four-wheeler down.
Oh yes. Well, we do have four-wheelers, and they were yeah. When we first moved here, we put this in like 2 years after, but yeah, they were using the four-wheelers and they were jumping the hill, and yeah, not a safe situation. Boys will be boys. Here is that steps. I have sedum that kind of seems to take over the steps, and I pull it out frequently, but as you can see, there's the wrought iron railing that we brought back from Minnesota, an old rusted flower that I had bought many years ago at probably one of the art shows. Next. And there is just a nice little view of my garden shed. I don't do any potting in there. I actually use the shed to store all my garden art, and anything that needs to come in, like the glass and wood things that I want to preserve. Here's the side view. I'm still kind of working on enlarging my bed. I kind of just sit on the ground and I pull the rocks out a foot or so every year. That way my husband doesn't notice it as well. But I figure if I keep big swoops in there, he won't even know because he doesn't even have to get off the lawnmower to go around the edging. As you notice, we have a lot of field stone. It's readily available out here in the country. You can find any farmer and they'll be glad for you to take that off their hands. Next. Some coneflowers. This big curly thing on kind of in the middle of the screen is an old auger that we stopped at my husband's work. He works at a metal shop and I saw that laying on the ground and I'm like, oh my God, what is that? And he just thought it was nuts. I said, I need that for garden art. So I got another one this summer, so now I have 2 of them. I figured, well, it's the world's biggest lightning rod, but yeah, it's pretty unique. This is a trellis I made out of frames. I went to the thrift stores and stripped them down and painted each one each color, screwed them together. I do have them supported in the back with a piece of rebar. I don't have anything planted on it this year. In the past, I put like little cardinal flowers, something not so heavy. Otherwise, like the morning glory, I think would just swallow it right up and it would be really hard to get off because I do take that in the winter. Next. Some old trunks, tree trunks that we had. I just popped some pots in there and the ones from the nursery because they're kind of like flexible and I just shoved them in the hole and again, put the pop of color with the famous petunias in. Next. This is a little side garden that I started a couple years ago because with the trees, we couldn't mow in there. It was a pain. So I made a big bed all the way around the trees with the fieldstone and put in a whole bunch of hostas, and I think I have about 25 hostas in there now. Some, they're coming along, and I kind of like call it my bird garden because I have some fun little bird houses hanging there and a glass bird bath. Next. Here is the little greenhouse that we built, and when we bought the house, that used to be all one big garden, and it was just so much to weed. So we just made defined garden beds. They are not raised. We just made a frame, put them right on top of the garden, and we had the big stone edging, and we just put a ton of bark chips around, so it's so much easier to maintain. And then here's just another view with some big white panels that I have pole beans that I plant, and they grow up there, so you can walk right underneath it and pick beans, and no bending over there. So I believe this.
Go ahead.
Pardon me. I believe this was the last slide.
This is the last slide of Jackie's.
Yep. Then there is my garden.
All right. Let's take some questions here. Where do you put your tchotchkes in the winter?
I put them all in the little garden shed.
Okay. And we have, under your pergola, do you have thread leaf buckthorn?
I do have one there, and I noticed it is, it had some kind of a disease and it's dying, so it's actually going to get taken out.
Oh.
Yeah, and
Oh.
it just didn't do anything for me. I love the tree, and maybe I'll get another one and plant it somewhere else.
This person says they have one and they love it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not invasive and unusual looking. Let's see, do we have? And that's all our questions for Jackie. So
Okay.
can you watch replay? Yeah. You can
Thank you.
play with the same key. And if that key doesn't work, I'm going to post a link to the replay in social media. So, all right, our third garden of the night.
Okay. This is Jason Miller's garden. It's on the far east side of Appleton, almost to Darboy. And you'll see why I called it the secret garden as we go along. One of the things I like about Jason's garden is he did almost all the work himself. He's younger and he can do that. but a lot of the things that you're going to see are things that he actually did himself, and I kind of like that. This is their front door area on left and right, and it was his wife's idea just to kind of collect unusual flower pots, and then they decided to collect pots and pans and everything like that to put flowers in. And I did ask if all the pots have holes drilled in the bottom, and yes, they do. But as you go up to the front door, there's pots and pots on both sides and around by the garage too. This particular shot I liked because the play of the two petunias against each other, the colors are the same, but the textures and the dominant colors are kind of opposite of each other. And I thought it was kind of a cool putting them together. And you can see towards the bottom here, he does have, and you'll see this a couple places, milkweed growing, and they've let it grow. This is, again, along the front of their house. And again, you can see at the bottom, he's let some milkweed grow here too. Pots and unusual containers are kind of their thing. They've been in the house since about 19 years. And he had this ladder planter out in the front of the house. And I said, well, aren't you afraid that maybe in a wind or something, the pots will get knocked off? And he said, no, they're screwed on, so there's no danger of that. But I like the bright blue. I thought that added a nice accent color to the house. This is some of the pots along the front of the garage. These Gerbera daisies are at the other side of the garage, and he said they've had them for about 5 years. They just look so nice because they take them in and keep them in the house over winter. This is another example of having kind of like a green hedge along the side of the house. And then if you go along a little bit, you will see this bird planter. And again, it acts as kind of a stop the eye kind of feature, some color and shape to break up the greenness of the flower bed along the side of the house. This is a bench that Jason actually built. And it actually, if you look, it actually has a working sink over on the side here. I thought that was kind of clever. As you go along the side of the house, he has a mini pond. It has some arrowhead, pennywort, and bean bog plant, which I don't know what it is, but it's in there. If you go again a little bit further along, you'll come to their back patio. The sinks that are along the side of the house here, when they have company, are filled with ice and become beverage containers. And again, you can see they've kept up the theme of pots and pots of all different kinds of things along the back deck here. Herbs can kind of get away from you if you let them. And so they've used another sink as their herb garden here, and it kind of keeps things kind of contained a bit and from running wild. And so if you stand on the back deck here and look out, this is what you see. And this is the secret garden. Apparently when they bought the lot, the land kind of falls away from the street into the backyard. And so they've used that when they built the house. They wanted to have some windows in the basement, and they wanted to have a lower level down here for the gardens. And so they kind of used the landscape to accomplish this. And at one time, the whole back of the house was open. And so when they decided to put the deck in, they had to bring in truckload of dirt to fill up the space, because it was like the hole was like 5 feet deep. so they could put the flat deck on. When they put the dirt in for the to hold the deck, they also put in this terraced retaining wall so they could add more beds. And Jason built the retaining wall. And you can see tucked in everywhere in amongst the flowers are things like the frog on the left or little pieces of art tucked in here and there. There's I think a butterfly house over here, and I think this, I'm not quite sure what I remember that is, but little things tucked in all over the place. Originally, they just had grass on the hillside that came down from the deck to the pond. And they found that when the grass was any bit wet, like from dew or rain, and people would walk down the steep hill, they were falling. And so they put the steps in here and then the path above. And we'll talk about the rocks here a little bit later. Originally, he started with 8 fish in the pond. The fish stay in the pond all year round. In the winter, he puts in 2 aerators and a heat ring that leaves a bit of a hole in the ice that forms so that the gases that might accumulate under the ice have a way to escape, and that lets the fish stay healthy. The pond, Jason designed the pond himself, and it was originally put in because they couldn't get grass to grow on this lower level. So they decided, well, we'll just put in a pond. And so when he was designing the pond, somebody said to him, figure out what you want and then make it 2 times as big, because they said it's easier to do it 2 times as big from the start than it is to redo an old pond to make it bigger. And I think that's what they did then. The pond is 2 feet deep. And where he lives, there's an ordinance that if it's beyond 2 feet, then you need to have it fenced in, and they didn't want to do that. So the pond is a uniform 2 feet deep. He dug the pond by hand, shovel by shovel, cartload away, taking the dirt to the recycling center. It took him 2 months to dig the pond. Then they put the pond in, and all the stones that you see around the pond were hand-picked at a place called County Materials, whatever that is. Again, he did all the construction on the pond. I think I counted there were at least 4 different kinds of water lilies on the pond, and they stay in there all year round as well. Some yellow ones, and there's some little flowers here, little plants there. Fish everywhere. I think they thought we were going to feed them. That's why they came up to have their picture taken. When he designed the pond, he put in the waterfall again to add some interest, but it also helps aerate the pond for the fish. This was the first structure they had at the lower level. And where the pond is and in the back, it's kind of like a bowl. And so beyond the bench here, there's like a berm of soil up beyond the bench. And they've planted it kind of with taller plants to act as kind of a privacy hedge. This is the other side of the pond. The swing, if you decide you want to sleep out under the stars by the pond, the swing is about the size of a double bed. They also collect what I would call rusty iron art. And they found a lot of their pieces in St. Charles, Illinois, at the King County Fairgrounds. The fairgrounds has flea markets over the course of the summer. And so they would, the first time they went down, they just went with their car. Now when they go down, they take a trailer. And this is one in the front yard. And these are some examples of some of the other pieces that they have. The moose is like taller than I am. I'm like 5'2". Some more of their art. If you go down the street from where Jason lives and around the corner, there was originally supposed to be a lot that was long and narrow that went between the two streets where Jason lives and then the street that's parallel to the east of them. There was supposed to be a long, narrow lot, but it was never built on. And so what they did is they put in a water retention runoff area back there. And you can see behind the cows here, there's a bit of a trough that channels the water from people's backyards into the retention area. And so between Jason's home and the houses behind him, there's quite a bit of this kind of wild area, which makes you feel like you're not quite so closed in with city lots. This is just some examples of things, some of their artwork that in and amongst the plants. And the back of the bench where the berm is, where the taller plants were on the back side, which is quite sunny, they've planted, in this case, kohlrabi, also peppers and tomatoes as part of a vegetable garden. On the south side of his house, they have a dahlia patch that's coming along. And you can see on the bottom here, there's some little plants started. Those are different kinds of milkweed. As they are putting in plants now, they're trying to go to more native plants to attract butterflies. He also said that having the pond is a big attractor for birds. They see all kinds of birds because of the pond. Frogs and toads too, like the pond. This is a dwarf mock orange. And to me, it looks like kind of a double flower. It was just gorgeous. This is a clematis, and it's on a trellis that's made out of pipes put together with all kinds of elbows to make an interesting shape. Another bit of color, stop the eye feature. And this is the, as you come around the house, then this is a bunch of coral bells in various colors put together to add some interest. And so that's the end of Jason's garden.
Okay, let's see. We don't have any questions right now. Does anyone have any questions that you want to ask about this last garden?
Jason said he's kind of, he calls his garden the orphan garden because he always, and I do too, I call mine the Whitman Sampler Garden. You're supposed to plant in drifts, but we want one of everything. And so he gets shovels full of something from somebody or buys a plant here. And so it's kind of a hodgepodge, but I think it's more interesting than just having drifts of things, especially if you have a smaller lot.
I like the use of repurposing things too. That's fun in all of these. Off the eye is a good lesson. Doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. So that is our presentation for tonight. Thank you, Dee.
I do have one pitch I'd like to make.
Okay.
If you've got any gardening problems that you'd like answers to, send an email to gardenersos@outagamie.org, and we'll get back to you. If we don't know the answer right off the bat, we've got a lot of resources that we can get into. So if you've got any gardening questions, gardenersos@outagamie.org. And if you've got any suggestions for future programming or comments on this program, you can also send it there. Hopefully next year we'll be able to be back to in-person presentations at Appleton and Little Chute. But even though with that said, we'd still like to continue these Zoom meetings too, because they do seem to be quite popular. So one more time, Gardner SOS at Outagamie.org. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom, and thanks, Dee and Jackie and Jason, who's not here, for sharing your gardens with us. They were wonderful.
Thank you.
Educational. And thank you all for coming. I'm going to end this. See you.
Bye.